So they say that graduating with SCAP is a super wonderful fun time, but leading up to it can feel a lot like... What's up, you guys? So I am finally going to be doing this follow-up video to my experience with ASU, the SCAP program, and working at Starbucks. But first things first, a big part of why I even went back to school to begin with is because of God. And so at the very end of this video, I'm going to include my personal testimony or a little backstory of why I even went back to school to begin with. But a lot of people did ask for this follow-up experience. So I hope this helps you guys in a practical way, but I also want to encourage other people who are interested in my testimony and that you're able to receive from this video. So anywho, without further ado, here's an honest review and recap of my experience with some tips and tricks of what I think really helped me while in the SCAP program with Starbucks. Also, I've been saying SCAP wrong this whole time. The program is called SCAP, not SCAP. SCAP. So, I'm really sorry. So the biggest first question is SCAP worth it? Yes, 1000%. Yes, the SCAP program is worth it. And I know Starbucks can be a really hard and frustrating job depending on your location, your customer demographic, and the people you work with and your management. However, the benefits, especially with the SCAP program, make your time at Starbucks so incredibly worth it. And if you just have a really horrible time at your location, I can't say that the grass is always greener on the other side at a different location, but it is worth considering. However, I really think as a grown adult that the benefits, the health benefits, the dental, the vision, retirement benefits, your 401k, and how they match, like those benefits are super amazing. And then on top of that, getting free tuition through SCAP is super crazy awesome. So it's definitely worth it. And never, ever did I think that I would go back to school, especially with how expensive it is. So when I was made aware of the SCAP benefit through Starbucks, more on that later, I had to take advantage of it. As far as taxes are concerned, I never had to have anything taken out of my check, even after enrolling in all 3 semesters in a year, so spring, summer, and fall, and taking over 15 credits. So one thing I was super nervous about was if I was doing more than full-time credits with the SCAP program. I was worried that it was going to surpass the tax-free limit and then it would have to come out of my paycheck. And at the time of this video, the tax-free limit is this amount here. I believe it's a little bit over $5,000, but with the grants and everything, the tuition coverage through SCAP, I never surpassed that limit. And I'm going to break that down a little bit more here. All right, so here I have a screenshot of what my ASU dashboard looked like and the different amounts that were applied to my account for each of the semesters for the given year shown there. And so just something to note real quick before I explain more. Please ignore the direct subsidized loan portions, as those were personal amounts that I chose to withdraw, so that does not apply because everyone's direct subsidized loan might be different. But with regards to the Starbucks benefit, the cool thing is that here I have like the grants, the scholarships for different semesters, and then I even had like a federal Pell Grant here. And so those are the respective amounts. And originally when I saw these, I got nervous and worried if these amounts were going to apply to the Starbucks tuition benefit, the tax-free limit, because I was like, oh my gosh, we're already over that limit within the first semester. But later on, what I figured out was the grants, the scholarships, doesn't matter what type of grant, what type of scholarship it is, those do not apply towards that tax-free limit. The only portion that applies to that is this nice one here on the bottom. So where it says Starbucks tuition benefit and this amount here, out of all 3 semesters, this was the only amount that applied towards that tax-free limit of the $5,250 per calendar year. That's, for me at least, and I'm not sure how grants and scholarships are going to be applied across the board for others, but for me, in this calendar year or in this time frame, this was the only amount out of that 5,250 that was applied to my tax-free limit. And so yeah, I never had to pay anything out of pocket. I never had to have anything taken from my paychecks because this be nice here. It was only $935 that Starbucks paid out of the tuition benefit part, and everything else was pretty much covered through like grants or scholarships. And so yeah, pretty sick deal if you ask me. And just to kind of show you a little bit more about the different payments that I had throughout my whole time that I was at ASU. This is the breakdown here. So these are all of the posted payments. And just to let you know, I already had some college credits. I had dropped out when I first went to college, and then way later in my adult years, I went back to ASU, or I went back to school and transferred into ASU. And so that's why my time at ASU was a little bit shorter than some other people, depending on how many credits they did or did not have prior to going to ASU. And so for me here, I'm going to break down the different things, but overall this was the total of posted payments, but this number is a little misleading because it also includes like the different direct subsidized loans that I decided to take out for myself, which again are individual specific. Like not everyone is going to take out the same amount for their direct subsidized loan. You might decide to not even take out any form of loan whatsoever for like your books or computer or anything like that, or any school supplies. So please ignore this. This doesn't apply to everyone. And then also the online credit card payments. So most of the time these were really small, and this was for like the books that I did decide to get online or through the course. Some of the courses did like a mass virtual book selling thing for a discounted rate, and so some of these smaller online credit card payments are for things like that, or for course materials that were offered online. And so boop, when you look at all of the different grants and scholarships, the benefit for that, well, my mic just disconnected during the recording. Okay, so where was I? So when you look here with the highlighted portions, all of the different grants and scholarships and the free money things that I got, which we love, they came out to $46,082, which is amazing. It's interesting because I noticed that sometimes I got like two of the same kind of grant. Like this one here says a Pell Grant, and then they went back in and gave me like a second Pell Grant. And I think it's because they distribute a certain amount at the beginning of the semester, and then depending on how much money they have left over at the end after they've done the initial distribution, they'll go back into the account and give you more money. Again, this is just for me, and I can't say that applies to everyone, but this is my budget breakdown of what I experienced when I was doing ASU with the SCAP program. But yeah, super cool. There's the CAP University Grant, CAP Scholarship, there is the Pell Grant, there is like a summer grant, but there's a lot of different scholarships and grants that they do award. And so you're probably going to be in good standing as long as you're passing your classes. You're probably going to be in a really good shape to not have to pay anything after that $5,250. And so the last thing I want to touch base on real quick is what it means when like the funds are applied to your account. And so I know that if you don't pass your courses, then you might owe Starbucks back the money for your courses and for your tuition. However, if you pass your classes, you're in good academic standing. Once these funds are applied to the account, because it'll say like pending disbursement when it's not finalized, but once it says applied to account, like once it hits the account, it's pretty final in my experience. And so I've even read on Reddit that once all of these things are applied to your account, even if you were to like leave Starbucks in the middle of a semester, but the funds were already applied to the account, you wouldn't have to pay Starbucks back for that tuition or for whatever was already applied to the account. And so, yeah, I stayed at Starbucks all the way through until I graduated. So I'm not I never personally tested those waters, but I have read that some people even still got their like SCAT graduation box after, depending on how close or far away they were from graduation. And yeah, I hope that helps. Also, a bonus tip is on your tax return, you get free money for being a full-time student. I know that this is for full-time. I'm not sure if this applies to part-time, but if you enroll as a full-time student, make sure that you include that in your tax return, and you can access your tax documents on your My ASU dashboard. Okay, so now we're gonna go into some tips and tricks regarding the SCAT program, and tip number 1 is keep track of your hours. And okay, so especially being a Hawaii partner, our benefit hours get calculated a little bit differently. Like we can fall in and we can fall out of benefits and back in on a month-to-month basis, but for the mainland, it's calculated differently. Because Hawaii's benefit eligibility gets calculated differently, it was both good and at times just terrible. So the Partner Contact Center, or the PCC, and the Benefit Center, they're 2 different departments. And because benefits get calculated a little bit differently, it was really hard. It seems like not everyone was fully in the know, and so a lot of times there was miscommunication. So the Benefit Center is always awesome. They were super awesome, knowledgeable, polite. But whenever I had to contact the Partner Contact Center, the PCC, I usually had difficulties. And so Hawaii, our hours are just weird and different, but working between the PCC and Benefit Center was quite difficult in my experience, and it was mostly because I was just trying to get the minimum hours necessary to qualify for benefits. And so I take complete ownership in that I was really just like trying to scrape by with the minimal to get benefits. And so on multiple occasions, I had to contact the PCC and go back and forth between PCC and the Benefit Center to figure out if I was eligible or not. And so it's just best if you don't try to get by on the minimal amount of hours, and that you just really stay on top of your hours. At that time, they didn't have calendars to tell you exactly when the benefit eligibility time, like the cutoffs, were every month, but now you have access to PDF calendars that say exactly when your benefit hours like cut off, which is great because I was trying to like do all this crazy math to figure out what day was the benefits end date, and then it just was wrong, and then I will lose benefits, and then stressful to say the least. Just stay on top of your hours. There were 2 occasions where the Partner Contact Center person I spoke with did not know how to calculate a Hawaii partner's hours. And so on both occasions, I had to elevate my case to a specialist, and the specialist was able to approve my benefits because I did in fact meet the minimum requirements. However, just to save yourself from the headache of being on hold for 2 hours, going back and forth, staying on the phone, having your call dropped, being transferred between departments, and then having to re-explain yourself, and then losing contact or dropping out of the call on accident, and then all this just crazy stuff, just stay on top of your hours. While I worked at Starbucks, sick hours and vacation hours did count towards my benefit hours, but please still check the most up-to-date eligibility requirements and regulations as they can change over time. I've included a link to Starbucks' eligibility resources in the description, as well as the PDFs that I went over. Okay, so a few other tips and tricks regarding things that really helped me. I used Rate My Professors a lot to figure out what teachers I would like, what type of courses I should take, just to kind of get a frame of reference for what type of coursework, what type of expectations the teachers would have. Just, it would help me figure out what to expect a little bit better. Of course, it's not bulletproof, but Rate My Professors and looking up the teachers and the different courses helped me a lot. And there's like multiple Arizona State University campuses, and so sometimes what I would do is I would just look up the teacher's name instead. Sometimes I noticed that some teachers may not have taught at Arizona State University quite yet. However, they might have taught at a community college within the state of Arizona. And so that was just something that I kind of considered. So again, not bulletproof, but does really help a lot to give a frame of reference when trying to choose which courses and which teachers. For books, I really recommend using either Amazon.com to purchase or rent digital textbooks. There's an update here. So when I was in school, I was able to rent printed books, but I guess they're getting rid of that. And so you can still purchase new or used print textbooks, but as far as renting, you're only allowed to rent digital textbooks. But this is an option. I found this to be really worthwhile and a lot cheaper than even the bulk discount prices that my courses would offer. And so in addition to that, there's also this website here called VitalSource. And so this offered a lot of really good, cheaper alternatives for textbooks, whether it be purchases or rentals. And so this is another source for books that you can check out. Lastly, bibme.org is a great resource for help with writing your citations. So yeah, bibme.org, super big help. And so in this portion of the video, I'm going to just share a little bit about my testimony regarding how God called me back to go to school and how I knew it was God. So at the time, I was still a college dropout, and I swore that I would never go back to college unless I absolutely needed to, like if I was planning to become a lawyer or a doctor or some sort of profession where I absolutely needed a degree. Otherwise, my thought process was, why am I going to pay all this money, spend all this time for something that's not really going to help me in the long run? At least that was my perspective back then. I just didn't think that I ever needed it. And then I felt like God told me to go back to school, and I was like, all right, well, you know what, God, if that's you, I was all sassy about it too. God, if that's you, you're going to have to help me go back to school without any of that student debt, because I don't want none of that. And then, so I was talking to a friend, and as we're talking, I'm aware that he's a manager of a Starbucks location, but I didn't know of the benefit about SCAP yet. And so I'm talking to my friend, and then this girl like randomly runs up to him in the middle of our conversation and like hits him on the shoulder and says, wow, I didn't know that Starbucks had such great benefits. Like, I didn't know that they paid for your whole first bachelor's degree at ASU. And my friend just calmly says, yeah, that's one of the benefits that we have at Starbucks. And she was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy, and walks away. And I was like, okay, well, if that's not a sign from God, I don't know what is, because totally just interrupted our conversation, said that one tidbit of knowledge, and left. And I think the next day I asked him if he knew of locations that were hiring, because that was just so blatantly the Lord. And so, yep, started working at Starbucks. I think a month or two. No, I think you are eligible after 3 months of working at Starbucks. And so started working at Starbucks. And so I started working at Starbucks. 3 months later, enrolled to SCAP. And here we are. I'm a college graduate now, finished my degree. Working at Starbucks was definitely a really challenging time of my life. If you're someone who tends to be hard on yourself, Starbucks can be really, really challenging, and it can be very overwhelming for quite a long time, but the benefits are super worth it. The culture of Starbucks is supposed to be very open, welcoming, inclusive, encouraging. They really care about your growth as an individual, not just as a Starbucks employee, but like, how do you accomplish or work towards your bigger goals and dreams, even if it's outside of the company. They're really great about building you up and developing you in that way. And so it was a great experience for those reasons, but still really difficult. And so if you're struggling to work at Starbucks to finish your degree, I was right there with you, but keep persevering, because you can conquer. And so, yeah, hope that helps. In any case, may God's peace be the journey. So I had other footage of me opening up this SCAP graduation box, but for some reason I don't know what happened to it, so I'm just gonna open this up for you guys here. And so this is the graduation SCAP box that you receive upon or getting close to graduation. So it's a cute little box, and then you get a little congratulations thing there, and then it opens up to a stole, a gratitude stole. It explains that there's like instructions when you first get it. So gratitude stole. Whoop. And then you get a tassel with Starbucks. The Starbucks tassel to wear with your cap and gown if you decide to go to graduation ceremony. And then you get a custom apron as well. So pretty cool.